Welcome to the Geek to Geek podcast, where we are motivated this week. I'm Void, and I'm here with my co-host Beej.
We can do it!
Yeah, I don't know if we're that motivated, but okay. We're talking about gaming motivation just because it's been on our list for a while. We want to talk about why we play different types of games, and we didn't really know how to frame the conversation. We just started doing our show notes, and then we kind of broke it down into different motivations that drive us or don't drive us, and that seems to maybe be the way to tackle this, right?
Yeah, and I was thinking a little bit on the way home that we didn't even write down the idea of why we play gaming motivation. We didn't even talk about why we play video games as opposed to other kinds of entertainment and media that takes our time up. So there's a lot that we could be talking about.
Oh, that one's easy for me. It's more interactive.
I knew that's what it would be. As soon as I thought about it, it's going to be super simple. On yours, it's going to be, yeah, I can do stuff. It's interactive. That's all it is. You're not just sitting there.
Yeah, I would say in terms of interactivity, video games is number one, and then reading is number two because it actively takes you using your brain, and then everything else falls after that. So TV and movies, this is probably why they fall way down my list. I'm exhausted at the end of a day. I work really hard. And I have two kids, and by the time that I sit down to have adult time for the night, if I don't do something that actually engages my brain, I'll just fall asleep. If I try to watch shows and movies, I can maybe watch an episode or half a movie in a night, but I'll end up falling asleep on the couch, which is something that I never would have happened before I had kids. But now it happens all the time. And it's
you and I are so different on that. I fall asleep on the couch all the time. That's a nightly thing for me. Just about 8:30 or 9 o'clock, I'm just lying there watching Dick Van Dyke or just something silly, and I'm like, ooh, sleepy time, and I just pass out.
I guess I just don't like to turn off my brain like that. I like to keep my brain actively engaged. So I would rather play a game, because if I play a game, I can stay up late and still get a decent amount of sleep and be fine and awake the next day. Whereas if I do something more passive, I'm much more likely to go to bed early and sleep longer and then feel exactly the same the next morning. Just have less time to myself the night before. So that's part of the balance, I suppose.
And I have to not do interactive things. That was one of the things that made me think about this, was because I can't do interactive stuff right before bed. It wires my brain up to constantly think about that, to where I don't sleep well right before it. So for me, gaming is an early morning thing when I'm getting ready to go to work, or just kind of relax that way, or after I've run, just to kind of chill that way, or a break during midday. But I can't do it late at night because it disturbs my sleep, and then I will just constantly be amped up, and I disturb Jennifer's sleep that way, because I used to start having all of these really crazy dreams and lucid moments of just as I'm falling asleep, and I tried to convince her that the door was moved, and I kept trying to I was one time I was lying over the side of the bed, and I was like, Jennifer, I need you to turn on the light, and she was like, no, you're just dreaming. I was like, no, I'm not. Just turn on the light. Do me a favor, turn on the light. And she turned it on, and I was looking around. She's like, are you okay? And I'm like, there was this giant red and yellow bug. And she's like, oh my God, you tricked me again. And it was from me staying up and playing video games until literally the moment before I went to bed, just walking from the other room and collapsing, that I realized I had to stop doing it right before bed. And I've moved into the reading before bed now, so that I can still have that entertainment as opposed to not doing anything. But it is not something I can do because of the interactivity, but that's what I love about in the mornings. It gets me woken up, and I can just do stuff instead of just feeling lethargic.
Yeah, and this might be a morning person versus night person type of thing too, because I'm totally a night owl, and I know that you are a morning person. Even though a lot of days I'm waking up before you now, just because of the nature of my job. It's still at the core of me, I am a night owl, and my brain does not work in the morning. I do everything the night before so that in the morning I can automate my routine, because I know that I'm essentially a zombie. My wife used to make fun of me for it before we lived together for super long, but I don't talk in the morning. I don't interact. I can barely think. So my entire morning, from the point where I wake up until I start working for the day, is like an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and the entire thing I do exactly the same every day and don't deviate from it, and it's just like complete and utter autopilot. And even on the weekends, like I won't play a video game until, I would say it's very rare for me to play something before noon. And even then, if I do, it's probably like 10 o'clock. Like, I won't play anything early morning because I'm just not awake enough. Like, my brain's not functioning yet.
Yeah, and mine, I am always going in the mornings. That's the best time for me to run, to play a game, to write and work. That once noon hits, I am done. That I have an afternoon slump just where it goes straight down, and I'm good in the morning. So yeah, I like getting that kind of interactivity gone in the morning, doing anything I can before my brain shuts down later on.
Yeah, and like I will routinely, well, not routinely, but I will often play games until like right before bed, and it could be super late. Like if you give me a couple days off of work, I will fall into my natural sleep pattern, which is sleep until about 10 a.m. and then stay up until about 3 a.m. That's right for me. So I'm getting like 7 hours of sleep still, which is about what I get right now when I'm on a work schedule. I have to force myself to go to bed earlier so I can get up early for work. But yeah, I mean, you give me like an extended holiday and I fall into that, 3 a.m. to 10 a.m. sleep pattern just easily. Like that's what I did through almost all of college, and it was perfect. I love that. Like I am so productive between the hours of, say, like 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., like when everybody else is sleeping. That's like my prime hours. I love being awake then.
Oh, that would destroy me. I think that might actually destroy my mental health and physical health, that doing that, because you can get me up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm great. I'm good. I can't remember the last time I slept past 7. The idea of sleeping till 10 is foreign to me at this point.
Yeah, but how late do you stay up? Like that's the other end of it.
10-ish. I usually read until 10:30 or 11-ish.
Right. And like I don't go to bed before 11. If I do, I'm probably like I had a crazy week and it's like the 4th day of my week and I'm exhausted, or it just something else crazy happened, like I'm sick or something. If those things aren't true, like I don't fall asleep before 11. Most nights I'm probably falling asleep around midnight, maybe a little bit after. But that's because I have to wake up at like 5:45 the next day. So
yeah,
it totally depends. I mean, work throws me off, but I would rather be awake at night whenever possible.
And that's why it's hard for me to game online at night with people too, is because I am lying in bed between 9:30 and 10, that I might be awake on my Kindle reading, but not on my phone and not at my computer, but I'm there chilling and doing something like that. But I can't game or play it late at night like that because I have to be in bed just to keep everything normal and going.
That's interesting.
So, yeah.
Okay, well, sleep tangent side thing that we just did, that was interesting though.
Yeah.
Let's get into some of the main bulk of this. So we kind of broke it down, like I said, by different reasons that we do things, and there are obvious differences between us, but let's just start at the top. So we put like story and narrative, and I think this one applies to both of us. I mean, yeah, this is definitely one of the reasons that I play games. I fall into it sometimes, and when I do, it's usually very hard. And especially after I hit a tipping point in a game where I've like mentally decided that, yes, I'm going to finish this, that's the point where I could be hooked, even if like the mechanics and the rest of the gameplay aren't keeping me involved. I will stay with it to finish a story. And I guess a recent example of this, because it makes it easier with examples, would be like Mass Effect Andromeda. Like I was so invested in the Mass Effect series. I still had that story hook, even though I didn't really like the story of Andromeda all that much. But just because I was so invested in that world and that universe, I finished it even though I didn't really like the mechanics beginning to end. I mean, it was serviceable, it was fine, but I didn't think it was that great at any point, but I still beat it.
And I'm pretty close to the same way, where story is my number one reason to play a game. I've always been an RPG guy, like we've talked about forever. You know, both of us are JRPG guys, and it's that story that draws me in. That no matter what else is going on, if there is a great story, I will probably deal with bad mechanics, like you said. But if the story is terrible or completely lackluster, just missing in a game game that is narrative driven. I mean, obviously, I'm not looking for an epic in Mario 64. I'm not expecting a JRPG style story there, but if the mechanics are passable and the story is terrible, or I just can't invest in it, I just stop. I can't push forward unless the mechanics and the gameplay is phenomenal, because like Xenoblade Chronicles X, the gameplay was fine. It played kind of, it was an RPG, did everything right. It played kind of, the battle system was interesting, felt a little bit like Kingdom Hearts to me, and the way you battled with the menu and the real time, but I didn't like it enough to not care at all about what story was being told. So I just bounced off of it, where certain games like Breath of the Wild surprised me how invested I got into the story of it because of the way that it was told, that was a driving force for me to continue playing. And the mechanics were awesome, don't get me wrong, it's super fantastic, but it was that narrative that really made me want to find out more. It kept me going forward, where I might have given up just on some exploration if it wasn't there.
Yeah, and I mean, we should probably just get into exploration then too. Like, I love exploration, but some people love exploration for the sake of exploration.
And that's not me.
I'm kind of like that in the real world. Like, when I go out and explore, I enjoy it. But in a video game, I'm not that way. I have to have some kind of goal to the exploration. Like, I like the exploration when it has a purpose. And, I rarely, if ever, will spend time in a world just to spend time there. And I've heard other people say that they do that. And it's just not something that appeals to me at all. I'm not going to just be in a world to be in a world. Like, if I'm doing that just to take in the sights or whatever, I have the real world. It's right outside my door. Like, I can go do that, even though I know that it's different worlds, it's a virtual, but it's still just like, it's not something that drives me to play the game. But Breath of the Wild scratched the itch for me in terms of exploration. And it's interesting because it was exploration to like improve your character, make yourself better, so that in the end you can defeat Ganon and beat the game. And it's like, there were lots of little dopamine hits throughout it. You can get the Korok seeds, you can get all of the different shrines. And I liked all of those, and those were designed very well. It was very fun. It kept me hooked. But the thing is, as soon as I beat Ganon, I haven't gone back to that game.
Me either, and it makes me so sad because I wanted to. That I still want to, but I beat Ganon, and I'm like, oh, okay. I'll wait on expansions in the DLC.
Right, and it's like the exploration was in the service of making Link stronger so that I could beat Ganon. And once I did that, okay, mission accomplished. Like, there's no other goal besides just finish it by checking all the boxes, and that's not compelling to me. Like, I don't want to explore just to explore.
And even with the cosmetic upgrades that you get with the Tunic of the Wild for finishing out and finding all of the shrines, it wasn't enough for me to finish out, because I'm not that much of a collector, even though I love collecting while I'm doing it. And the exploration is super fun. I will log into a game just to run around and see what is being done and expanded on. Like, pretty much anytime one of my favorite games gets a new area, I'll resubscribe and want to see what's going on for a while with a new content patch or something like that. It's what drives me crazy that I haven't played Final Fantasy XIV in as long as I have, because I've never seen the Heavensward stuff, and I want to see like Moghome and the areas like that I haven't been able to experience, because I do love those worlds and I love running around and experiencing it while I'm going through. And even just running around is fun sometimes. I've done that in MMOs quite a bit, of just going back and experience like, hey, I'm in Ashara again. Woo, I had good memories here.
That's so funny, because I've literally never done that ever.
Have you not?
No, I don't feel the need to do that. And you're talking about Heavensward. Like, I really liked Final Fantasy XIV. I really liked Heavensward, and the setting was cool. Like, I liked it. That's a true statement. I did like it, but I played that until I got to the end of the story content, and I beat the expansion, and then I stopped. Like, as soon as I experienced the end of that story, the end of the content they had, I'd run everything once, I was done. Like, that's my end game state, I guess, once I've seen everything that it has to offer. Like, I don't go back to part of it is like the gear grind, Like that
Yeah.
collection, which is another thing that we have in here, like the, motivation to collect things. I don't have that either. So between not just wanting to be in a world to be in a world, because that's not who I am, and not feeling the need to collect things or like look cool at endgame, which is a lot of people's endgame, that's
Right.
probably why I bounce off of MMOs once I've completed the story. And if there's good content, like if there's stuff I haven't seen yet, or there's a good story to dig into, I will gladly play it. And I actually am. I resubscribed this week, but I'll talk about that in Geekery.
And one thing I think is interesting about exploration is it depends on the world itself and the property of the game, because like DCUO, DC Universe Online was the MMO that was on PlayStation 3 for a while. It was PC. I'm not sure if it's even on PS3 anymore. But it was the DC Comics MMO, and my wife loved it. She just fell in love with DCUO when we had it on the PlayStation, when we first got the PS3. And she loved it for so many reasons, that she was a superhero. She was getting to interact with Superman and Wonder Woman. She was getting to do all of this stuff. But more than anything else, she flew around Metropolis and got to find the Daily Planet and stand on top of it. That she flew her character to stand on the Daily Planet's globe on top of it, and would find the LexCorp building, and just things like that would just make her day. I would come in there and she was just standing at the top of a skyscraper, spinning the camera in a circle around her character, and be like, "This is so pretty. I'm finding things." And eventually that wore off once she had found it and done that for so long, and the content they were putting out at different holidays wasn't engaging her anymore. And the gear grind as well. She did not like gear grind. But the exploration and the experiencing of the world is what drew her into that game. So if there's a property, I've done that with Star Wars games. That's what did it in the Old Republic for me. Was like, I'm in Nar Shaddaa, woo, and just I want to see all this stuff. I want to see the Sarlacc pit on Tatooine, and I would run off and find it. I explored a lot in the Old Republic just for the sake of it, but it wasn't enough to keep me playing the game.
Okay. I mean, sometimes I will set something for myself as a goal, like, hey, I want to see this. But it's usually like I just want to see it once really quick. Like I never go back in the world to be like, oh, I need to be here again. It's like the one time. That's all I need. Just one new unique experience and I'm done. But I want to hear more about, I mean, I kind of said like how I feel about collection. I'm interested in what you feel, because you have like MMO, which is one type of collection, but then you're also more into the toys to life than I am, which is a totally different type of like collection motivation.
And I see those as two different kinds of collection, I guess, in my mind, where like the toys to life stuff, I've really moved out of at this point because Disney Infinity failed and I haven't gotten into any of the others, and I've realized how expensive it is to really do.
Yeah.
But I love toys. I love stuff sitting around like that. And those, I would always be looking for sales. I was always looking for some kind of deal. And so it was hitting, like you said, that dopamine rush where I was like, oh, I found this really cheap. I can get 3 of them today for the same price I would get for 1. And it was fantastic in that regard. But then it's just piling stuff up and I don't have room for it. And so you know how that are. So you know how that kind of thing is. But MMOs are the worst culprits for collection for me, because I never want to get rid of something that I worked really hard for. That whenever I've raided for something or I've done a long quest, if I've crafted it, I'd never want to physically get rid of that item. And I say physically in the virtual way. I never want to get rid of the actual item, even if it is saved on my character as, say, a transmogrification or glamour or some sort of appearance item. I never want to get rid of the item itself because I worked for it and I have something to show, which is weird because I don't do that in offline games. I'm like, I'm going to throw this stuff away if it's a single player game. But man, if it's an MMO, I just keep everything. You should see some of my characters' banks that I just, they're terrible.
I bet. No, for me, it's like I get rid of that stuff left and right. I have no sentimentality attached. Just like, whatever, I'm done with that. I have better gear now.
And I've tried to do that now that I'm playing WoW again. I've tried to clear out and get rid of some stuff. And then I look at some of the items that I know that I collected 13 years ago when I started playing this game that were within the first year of me playing. And like a Drakefire amulet to get into Onyxia's lair, and some of the Aqua Quintessence, I believe, from Molten Core, and I cannot get rid of it. My Onyxia scale cloak to Raiden BWL, I was like, I cannot get rid of this stuff, where even though I have the appearance, I have, let's say, like my Benediction and Anathema or Anathema, the priest staff that you do the epic quest for early on that you could do, I have the appearance saved. I can transmogrify it onto anything I do, and I do quite often, but I'm not getting rid of that item because you can't get it anymore. I never wear the item. Don't get me wrong, I'm never going to run around with that staff on, but I have it, and it's silly.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get rid of those items, give me your login and I got it for you. It's no problem. But outside of that, I would say, like, I guess the only reason that I would keep something like that, I don't have the same attachment that you do. I'm thinking of one specific item in Final Fantasy XIV, and I only keep it for the appearance. Like, if I could get the appearance and sell the item, I would in a second. But it's not a whole gear set or anything that I worked super hard for. There's one hat that you get as part of the Bard quest. That's my main in Final Fantasy XIV is Bard.
Right.
And when you actually do like the job quest to get your job, the advanced level jobs, you get a whole set of armor that has a cool look to it and like a special weapon. You played enough to get that far, right?
Oh, yeah. I finished everything out and did all of the raids in A Realm Reborn, except for just the, I want to say, last 2 content patches.
Okay, so yeah, when you do the job class quest and you get your full set of whatever, it's basically the stereotypical look and feel of that class from the Final Fantasy series, which is really cool. And I didn't even hold on to most of the gear, but the hat for the Bard falls down in front of your eyes in such a way that most of the cutscenes in the game make it so that your eyes are hidden when you're supposed to be looking at other people, and I find it hilarious. So every time I get a new piece of headgear, I always glamour it to go back to that. I think it's called the Coral Chapeau. It's just like the level, I think it's level 30. It might be level 50, whatever.
I think it's 50 if it's the one at the very end, because they changed the appearance from the original ones.
Yeah, it's whatever the Bard class is, like that main Bard class quest. And I just think it's hilarious that, like, when you're supposed to be making very dramatic eye contact with other people, there's a hat in the way. I can't get over how much I love that. Besides that, I have no sentimentality to anything in MMO in terms of gear. But that hat, man, it's so good.
That's awesome, because I don't like the way the hat looks in general. That was one of the ones that I know exactly what hat you're talking about. And I had a friend who played a Bard for most of it and absolutely wore the death. He just wore that hat all the time, and I'm like, we need something else.
No, you don't. That hat is perfect. But other things outside of collection, I know you also had social on here, which kind of goes with MMOs. So
yeah,
for me, it's not really a huge motivating force, especially in MMOs. Like I said, MMOs, I get sick of the gear grind. I get sick of the end game, the way they try to hook you on that, like rat race type of thing. So I really like playing them with people when I have other people around, but I don't go into an MMO for the social experience. Like, if I get it, that's a nice to have, but it's not something that actually motivates me to play an MMO. But on the other side of it, there are games that I specifically play with people, like especially my brother. My brother and I, like, we will play games together, and it's not super often because we both work a lot. But there are games that it's like, if I see him in that game or he sees me in that game, it's fun to jump in together and just like do that because there's another person there. And like, even this last weekend, and I'll talk about this when we get to Geekery, but I was playing some Player Unknown Battlegrounds with him and a couple friends, and that was really cool because it was social. Not necessarily, well, the gameplay is interesting too, but it was mostly because it was social, and that was the fun part.
Yeah, and I'm the same way with MMOs, actually. I don't go in looking for the social aspect anymore, but it's wonderful if I get it, and that will make me stay somewhere. If I was going to bounce off of it for any reason, the social can keep me there because I like the people I'm playing with. Right now, my WoW guild is really awesome, and I like those people. I talk to them, and like I've said before, that's keeping me playing beyond when I probably would have left before, much to my wife's chagrin on that one, where she doesn't necessarily like me playing World of Warcraft because I've had a lot of issues with gaming addiction and bad mental health stuff that compulsions that pretty much only manifest with World of Warcraft because it's been such a long, steady, regular part of my life. But the social aspect of it keeps me playing it longer. WildStar, there's a great group that Gigi Chestnut on Twitter got me into that she plays with. Just wonderful people, and whenever I log in, they're there. And it was really funny. I logged in one day, and this guy was talking about that he had just downloaded some books on Amazon, and we were just kind of talking about it, and he had downloaded my book, that he had bought my books that morning and had started reading them. And I was like, wow, what a coincidence is that you just randomly picked up my book when we were talking about it. I was like, good job, dude. Where it made me really happy, where that kind of coincidence has only happened one time before to me.
Yeah, and like I mean, there are people that I like being social with. It's just rarely tied to a game. So like, I know like that one for you is tied to WildStar. Whereas like for me, I have a guild in Final Fantasy 14, and they're awesome people, but they're awesome people outside of that game too. Like it's
right.
Belgast on Twitter.
Oh,
and, like,
yeah.
The extended group around him, I'm kind of on the fringes of it, but those people are all fantastic. And I talk to them on Twitter. I talk to them like in the blogosphere of what's left of it. We talk in terms of like podcasting because a lot of them podcast and we podcast. I am in a Slack channel with a bunch of those guys, and I'm into the guild in Final Fantasy 14. So the fact that those guys and girls are awesome is like outside of FF14. It just happens to be that I play with them when I do play, and I enjoy all the time that like I run dungeons with them and do group content with them. But again, it's not like that's not why I'm going into the MMO or. Yeah. It's just that, like, those people, I have other ways to talk to them, too. So I value the social part of it separate from the game part of it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But, I mean, I guess also along the MMO line is sandboxes. And I kind of wondered where you fall on this these days, because a pure sandbox does nothing for me. Like, I will get bored in... It depends on how complicated the sandbox is, but maybe an hour, maybe less, maybe 2 hours, like at the most, like the outer edges of it. It's just kind of like... I need goals and direction and something to work towards. Otherwise, like, why am I wasting my time in a sandbox? I have better things to do.
Sandbox games are the number one thing that I want to love. The idea of them is perfect. It's like communism, where on paper, everything works out wonderfully and it's just so much fun. You're creating everything that you could ever want, and it is just great. And then I play them, and it takes about an hour to an hour and a half, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is why I don't play these. It's like I'm bored now. Okay. And it's not that there's not things to do. Don't get me wrong. I am a very creative, very kind of hyperactive person. It's like I can do stuff, but it's like, okay, I've done stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm done. I've seen what I need to see about this. And the only sandbox that's really ever resonated with me isn't even a true sandbox, but it was Star Wars Galaxies, where there weren't quests, there wasn't an economy, there weren't really vendors, everything was player run, there weren't towns in the world, the players created them, where you sit me down in something like that, and I adore it. Star Wars Galaxies and Ultima Online, where so much of it is player driven, I can consider that a kind of sandbox where there's just an infrastructure for you to, not even infrastructure, where there's just this framework for you to play with and make your own impact on the world. I'm great with, but when it comes to actually just being sandbox, I can't.
And I think like I do myself a disservice in some ways when it comes to early access games, because if something gets enough hype, I will try it. And a lot of the time in early access or alpha or beta or whatever that particular developer wants to call it, a game is basically a sandbox. They haven't put in all of the things around it that give it structure and goals to work towards. It's just like, here's the sandbox, find the fun. We're still working on it. And if I get into one of those games and then I see that it's just a sandbox, I will often just kind of like play. Like I said, I play around for a half hour, maybe 2 hours at maximum, step away from it and never come back to it. And I'm thinking about like Kerbal Space Program. That's a game that I would probably love. And I think that they have patched in a bunch of content and like tutorials and things to do and goals to work towards. But when I touched that game, all it was like the physics engine, and you could like make rockets and take off, but there was no direction. And I have never been back to that game.
I can't play Kerbal. I had 2 work studies who were my students for years who played Kerbal religiously. They brought laptops, came in, played it. I saw so much Kerbal with Jake and Kyle. It was awesome watching them. It was hilarious watching some of the stuff that they were doing and building and the projects that they put together. It made me really happy, and I knew looking at it from the moment that I saw it, I would hate it even though I love the idea of it. It is just not something I can do. Kind of the same way with Sims. It's like, oh yeah, that's kind of not the Sims, but just simulation games. Love the idea of it. Will never play them because I have the attention fly of a span.
Perfect.
The attention span of a fly.
Yeah. Okay, got it. I guess another one in here that we want to talk about was just like unique mechanics, like games that are really truly doing something new. I really appreciate that. Like, that's one of my motivations for gaming, is seeing new things. So if somebody has a game with truly a new unique mechanic, I want to try it. Like, I might not beat that game, I might not play it for super long, but I do want to sample it, and I'm willing to pay money to do that. But even if it becomes like a smash hit or a cult classic or something, that doesn't mean that I'll be interested in the sequel if they don't like refine it and make it into more than it is and actually like turn it into a really good cohesive game. If it's just one mechanic or one gimmick, like, even if it's interesting, sometimes it needs more than that. So that's kind of where I fall on it. Like, I am willing to pay money to experience them, but it doesn't mean that I'll love the whole game or that I'll even play the whole game.
And I mean, what was the game that you played that was all in bullet time? I want to say it's Hot Streak, but I know that's
Super
not
hot.
it. Super Hot. I want to play Super Hot, and it's not. I don't want to play it enough to really pay for it, so I'm waiting on it to be like one of the $275 to $499 Steam games, and then I'll play it, because the gimmick sounds really cool, but I know that I will not play it nearly as much as I should to get any amount of value out of it above that. Because I just want to see the mechanic.
Super Hot is really good. I like that game a lot. And actually, there's a rumored Steam sale coming up in like a week, so keep that in mind.
So I'll see what it costs then.
Yeah.
And I mean, like Portal was awesome, and it had obviously, industry changing mechanics where everybody knew that the cake was a lie, and never played Portal 2. Just didn't care. I was like, okay, I've seen what Portal does. I've played through it. It's like, yep, cool deal. Never played Portal 2.
Portal 2 is really good, and
I'm sure it is.
That's a big oversight fantastic on your part because of the story. It's not. I mean, they improve on the mechanics, they iterate on the mechanics, and that part is fine, and it works, and is good, and it's amusing the first time. But that second game is about the story, and it's a really, really good storytelling in a very interesting way.
Really? See, I don't know anything about it. Like, weirdly enough, as far entrenched in all of this that I am, Portal 2 was just one of those that passed me by because I don't know anything about it other than it's Portal 2. So I'm like, more of the same mechanic I've already played.
Yeah, whereas like Portal 1 is, here are these groundbreaking mechanics, and there's this story on the side, and the story became kind of a cult classic. Yeah. Which is more than a cult thing now. Now everybody knows Portal.
Right.
They realized that for Portal 2. And the mechanics are still there, and they're still good, and they're solid. And like I said, it's good gameplay. But the story becomes, I don't want to say front and center, but the story becomes the more important part of that game in Portal 2, whereas the story is like secondary in the first game. Does that kind of make sense?
It does. And that kind of, how can I even put this? That is exactly the kind of thing that would make me play a game that didn't even improve on the mechanics, where even if they didn't iterate on it, knowing now that they enhanced a weak part of the game means that they're not just putting out the exact same thing and trying to capitalize on that one mechanic and that one good idea that they had.
No.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's not at all. That's why I think you would really like Portal 2, honestly. You should get that game because it's really good, and then they also improve the gameplay mechanics, but the focus of like it's so weird because it's not that the story when you're playing feels like it takes more precedence. It's just that in hindsight, you can tell that they realize that like the story could become such a key piece of the puzzle in the game, and they integrated it much better and they put a lot more thought into it, and there's a lot more depth there. And when I think back on the Portal series, I think about the amazing mechanics from Portal 1, but I think about the story from Portal 2. Even though moment to moment in the game, they might not feel that different, which is kind of a weird distinction to make.
It is, but that's exactly the kind of thing, like I said, that I would want out of a game. That makes me excited. You know, you can pick up Portal 2 for like $2 most of the time or less, so I'll keep an eye out.
Yeah, and you should. Okay, and then the last thing in here that we had for motivation, and I'm sure there's tons and tons more we could talk about, but this is what we came up with for the week, was systems, because this is one that I talk about all the time.
That's why I'm laughing, is because anybody who's listened to this podcast for more than 5 minutes has heard you say the word systems when you're talking about video games, and it just makes me laugh, because like, of course we saved this one for last.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of started with something that's most important to me, the story, and then I ended with the other thing most important to me, which is systems. Right. And it's just, I love games with interesting systems, even if they're complex. It's like, as long as they're designed elegantly and they work well together, I'm all in, you know? And it doesn't have to be complex. It can be simple systems. But if there are interesting systems to like get my mind into and just give my mind stuff to work on and like chew at in the background, like I thrive on that kind of stuff.
And I love good systems, but I hate systems that try too hard. That whenever I play a puzzle game or an RPG where you can see that the developers are trying to be clever and don't know how to pull it off, it just makes me stop whenever I'm like, and I can't even think of a game off the top of my head that does this. I just know that in PC games, a lot of the indie games that I try, it's like, oh, you're trying to be clever. And I think there's one that I tried called like Pixel Are You Squared, I think is like this super indie game made by a couple of people who are nearby here. Super nice people. I think they live in Huntsville. But the mechanics of the game were just like, I see where they're coming from, but they're entirely too complex.
There's definitely a line there, and sometimes it's hard to figure out like which side a game falls on it. Like sometimes the systems are not complex enough or too complex, or there's a lot there and you can tell they put in all this effort, but they're just not like elegantly put together, and it pushes you off of it. I mean, and the hard part is this line is different for lots of people. Like I think I'm more willing to jump into a complex system if it's interesting than you are, but I think we both also have like refined taste enough to know when, like in general, the systems are working or when in general they're not.
Yeah, and the main difference being you're willing to learn it, and I'm not willing to put in that time on something that might be bad.
Yeah, I can totally see that. So we might do more gaming motivations later if we think of other ones, or if you guys have questions or comments, or if there's things that were glaring that we missed and we just didn't think about, send your emails and tweets and whatever. But for the moment, let's dive into the geeky offer of the week. As we often do, we have Audible today. You can go to audibletrial.com/geek2geekcast. My book recommendation this week is Golden Sun. It's the second one in the Red Rising trilogy, and I am in the middle of it right now. It's not done yet, so I can't tell you like in terms of the story where it goes or where it lands, but I love the first book. I'm really enjoying the second book. I'm definitely hooked into it, and it's one of those audiobooks where the performance is transformative, which is something that I always look for. There are audiobooks that I listen to and I don't recommend to you guys because it feels like someone's just reading the book to you, and that's not what I get out of Audible. The thing that I really like is when the narrator makes the audio version something more than the book version, the text version. And Golden Sun definitely does. I mean, between like all of the accents and different voices that the narrator does that just fit the characters, it is so well done. So I recommend Golden Sun, but you guys can get any audiobook you want and help out the podcast by going to audibletrial.com/geek2geekcast and get a free book. And with that, it's time for our week of Geekery, where we share what we've been geeking out about this week. What did you have?
Well, last week I had recommended #GirlBoss as the geeky offer, and I wanted to talk about the TV show and that audiobook because it's very short. I still haven't finished it. It's only 4 hours long, but I'm about a quarter of the way through it. I've been listening just here and there while I've been working whenever I have something where I can pay attention to it. And the main character, the lady that this is, Sophia Amoruso, that this is based off of, Sophia Marlowe in the TV show on Netflix, I don't like her. That as a person, she is a train wreck. And I know that I could not be this woman's friend. I couldn't hang out with her. She is, you hear that cliche of I could go out and have a beer with her or something like that. Even Hamilton is making fun. I was like, Aaron Burr, I could have a beer with him. That kind of thing. I would not. I would end up punching this woman in the throat. And that is as nice a thing as I could say. Like, I don't like her, but I really like this show. I really like the people in it. I like the acting. It's compelling to me in a way that it takes place in 2006 to 2008, and that's how I acted in 2006 to 2008. And take me at my word on this, I would punch 2006 to 2008 BJ in the throat if I had the opportunity. So that is, being equal opportunity here, that I think I can relate to a lot of it, of wanting to start your own business, of being that early 20s, not knowing what you're doing, finding something that you're good at and latching onto it, where I still latch onto that. It's kind of the dream that everybody has. And also she's selling things on eBay, so I'm like, I do that all the time. And it's just really interesting to me, where listening to it on audio is really different than watching the Netflix show. And obviously it is, but I'm a big fan of memoir, so it's interesting for me to see how they dramatized a lot of the just almost Passover passages in the audiobook.
I still haven't read it or watched it, but just what you were saying got me thinking. And you do learn a lot about yourself and life and kind of the way of the world in your early 20s. So I don't know. It's really interesting. But the other one that I know you watched this because you were mad at me for getting you to try it. You checked out Master of None, and that's also kind of in that vein of figuring stuff out. It's a little bit later 20s, it's not early 20s, but it's kind of in the same vein, right?
It is, except I like Master of None. I really like it, and I don't know why it feels so different, but it is in that same vein. But I like the characters, I guess, is why it feels different, is that I watch Master of None and I'm like, oh, Aziz Ansari, and I can see him as Aziz Ansari playing a role in this one, as opposed to where I don't have any preconceived notion of the other of Britt Robertson, I think, in Girl Boss, other than she was in Tomorrowland. But Master of None is that same kind of figuring out what you're doing. I don't know. I love that kind of story.
Cool. Yeah, I really liked Master of None also. Especially, I thought season 2 was even better than season 1. Have you finished season 2 yet?
I haven't finished season 1 yet. I haven't gotten through it. I'm a few episodes in. We were watching a few of them, and it was so funny that we watched a couple the night that I sent you the picture. I was like, you won, or you convinced me. And then the next night I was like, Jennifer, what do you want to watch something tonight? What do you want to do tonight? She's like, Master of None, Master of None, Master of None. And I was like, tell me how you really feel. It was and really, she said it like that. It was really funny because she was very much into watching it at that point, and we haven't watched it since that night. Life has happened, but I really want to get back to watching some of it. Maybe tonight.
Yeah, report back in when you finish it. And then I know you were watching a bunch of TV lately. You did Handmaid's Tale, right? You finished
up Handmaid's Tale. Yeah, they finished the first season, and it is so good. Everyone out there needs to watch The Handmaid's Tale except for you, because you would hate it. Actually, I don't know if you would hate it that much. I don't know if you would like it, but I think that you need to watch it because they put a very, very strong emphasis on cinematography, like I've said before. But the finale is just so good. It's interesting because as bleak and I haven't read the book. I actually picked up the new special edition audiobook off of Audible recently, so I could listen to it once the season of TV ended. I've seen people say that as bleak and hopeless as the TV show is, it is more optimistic than the book is. So that makes me very, very, very excited to see how bleak the book is.
Interesting. Yeah, my wife said that I might like that one. She watched the whole season and she really liked it. So she said that she's like, I don't know, you should try it. You'll quickly figure out one way or another if it's for you. So I still intend to do that. But like I mentioned earlier, like TV and movies fall way down my priority list when it comes to things I do with my free time. So I will get to it at some point here.
And make sure that when you do this, it is one that, like I said, I think it was last week, where you have to watch this. It is a quiet show where a lot of the characterization is done through the cinematography and acting, where it's not something that I, at least, can be looking at something else and get anything out of.
Yeah, I mean, when I watch TV, I watch TV. That's another reason that I probably don't do it a ton, because I like being able to do a bunch of things at the same time. And if I'm into a show, like, that's what I'm doing, you know? If it gets to the point where I'm picking up my phone when I have a show on, it's probably not a show that's actually holding my attention, which means it's probably not worth my time. Yeah. And then I know your last thing, you're still into WoW, right?
Still into WoW, still playing it. I was really excited. The main thing is that they have finally put in heirloom items up to level 110.
Oh, cool.
So it has made leveling my mage absolutely delightful. It's not the grind that it was before, just that extra, I think I have an extra 50 or 60% XP from them, and it makes it so much quality of life better. That's not even a phrase, but that's how much better it makes it. It is way better with heirlooms. So I'm so glad they patched that in recently. I want to say it was last week they patched that in. So it's been like absurdly recent that it happened, and they're expensive. It takes 5,000 gold per piece to upgrade from 100 to 110 as the max level, and it's 2,000 gold each to go from 90 to 100. So I spent about 60,000 gold being able to do it, and it was worth every penny.
I don't know if that's a lot or a little, but okay.
It's a lot. It's enough.
Okay. Well, that's good that you're still liking it and having fun with it.
Still enjoying it.
Yeah. This week, I guess I did a bunch of stuff. I'm still doing the Fantasy Movie League, which is, I don't know, it's fine. I don't know if I'm going to do it again later, just because, like, I thought that it would be more different from week to week, but movie releases don't come out that often. So it feels like a lot of the time the best strategy is to just pick the big new release for that weekend and then fill in with all of the biggest releases from the last 2 weekends. So it's not like a lot of strategy. It's just like, okay, here's the things I pick. I thought it would be more than that. So it's still interesting. It's still fun. Like, I'll definitely finish out this summer season of it, but it's not as engaging as I had hoped that it would be. Although it is fun to do it like with other people, so you can discuss every week, which maybe that's the point of it instead, and I'm just looking at it wrong.
That's true. Yeah. Where it's not necessarily like fantasy football in the dynamic changes that you can have on a team, but it's about the people you're doing it with.
Yeah. And I also checked out The Expanse season 2 because it was on my list to get to eventually, and I kept pushing off. And it was kind of like meh. Like, I wanted it to be good because I liked the first season enough. There were parts of the first season I really liked, and there were parts of the first season that it's not that I hated them, I just got bored. Like, it wasn't doing enough for me.
That's where I am in season 1.
Okay, like, and there were things that it was just so predictable, or it was a little bit too slow in some of the storylines, and I'm like, get back to the interesting characters or the interesting storyline. And season 2, it looked like it was going to pick up with all the interesting characters in the middle of the interesting plot, and then it started jumping to other new characters, and I couldn't. Like, I really wanted to, and I was just like, really? Like, you can't stick with the interesting characters now that all the events of season 1 are done. You're going to introduce more characters and have to start them up from scratch. I don't know. I didn't have the patience for it. So I bounced off of The Expanse season 2, unfortunately, even though I wanted to like it. But then I
just
checked
read
out
the books. I haven't read anything but the first one. Have you read Leviathan Wakes?
No, I haven't. It's on my list for eventually.
That's the reason that I started watching The Expanse season 1, and if you've made it through The Expanse season 1, you really, really need to read those books because you will absolutely love them. Because I absolutely love them and couldn't get through season 1.
Interesting. Okay, I will have to give that another shot, or maybe just bump it up my priority list for reading. But okay, I'll keep that in mind. The other show I watched was American Gods, and this is one that I went into with very low expectations because I bounced off the book pretty hard when I tried it.
Really?
The setting just did nothing for me. Like, the American setting and like prison and like, I know they get out of prison very quick, but something about that.
I forgot that he was in prison. I thought it
was a mixture of like the writing style with the setting, like the Americana, like almost modern day setting that I just didn't like. I've talked about this before. Like when I read, it's escapism for the most part. I don't want to spend time in modern day or close to modern day. Like, if it's set in the real world, it better be far future or far past. Otherwise, you've kind of lost me most of the time. There are exceptions. So this one fell in there, and I just bounced off the book. So I went into the show not expecting anything, and I really like it. Like, even though it didn't work for me in book form, I like the setting in the show. I like the characters in the show, and I only watched episode 1, but there was enough there that I'm very interested to see what happens next. So it doesn't mean that I'll love the season, but I definitely am going to watch more.
And I've read the book 3 or 4 times. I love American Gods, and I haven't seen the TV show yet. I was waiting until the season ended so I could binge the entire thing, and I'm excited to see what they do with so much of it because I have such a specific idea of how things go in my mind that I'm not the kind of person who bashes adaptations, because I mean that was part of what I studied as a scholar was film adaptation, but I don't know how they're going to handle some of these situations. So it's going to be really interesting to see it on screen. And I am kind of amazed that you bounced off the book like that. But you do not like that setting, like you said. And for me, part of it was I knew that the final battle, and just there's not even anything here that I'm really spoiling for anybody, but one of the final confrontations in the show takes place in Chattanooga, Tennessee at Rock City. And that was like a vacation spot for me as a kid. I went there as a small child. It's about 3 or 4 hours to the east of me. And to see that was going to be a major climactic setting for this Neil Gaiman book, I was gonna plow through the book and see how it went. And now I've gone back to Rock City since then and seen the place where all of some of this stuff goes down, and it's really interesting to me. So I'm gonna be excited to see if they get to that in this season, filming on location and be like, I was there, I like it there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'll pick up the book again because I bounced off of it very hard. It was like, I don't think I made it 2 chapters. Like, it was just
I mean, if he's still in prison, you didn't.
No, it was not a book for me. But the show's good, so I'll keep watching. I'll report back. I played a bunch of games, so I bought ARMS for the Nintendo Switch, but I mostly bought it for my kids because like I wasn't super hyped for it after the test punch, and I don't have a whole lot else to say about it. It's still the same game that I talked about, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
But it just, the one thing that my kids don't care about this, but it bugs me. It just doesn't have that much content in it. Like it feels like for $60, the game should have more in it. And there's like one single player mode where you fight your way through a bunch of opponents. It's not even a story mode because like there's no real story here. It feels like they made maybe an interesting world, but they hid it all in the background and none of it is exposed to the end user, which is frustrating. like people do this sometimes. It's one of the reasons that like Destiny was so frustrating too. Like they wrote tons of cool stuff apparently, but it's all hidden in these grimoire cards that I'm never going to read those.
That's why Overwatch succeeded so hard, is because they've done such a good job of tying that world into the game itself and outside.
Yeah. So ARMS is like, it's still fine. Like it's another competitive multiplayer. I mean, it's Nintendo's take on a fighter, you know, like a fighting game. Nintendo made it. This is what it looks like, and my kids really like it.
You mean Smash Brothers?
Well, no, I would say 3D fighter as opposed to 2D fighter. But like my kids really like it, so I don't regret buying it. But it's also like I played it for 2 nights after I bought it, and I'm like, I think I've kind of experienced everything this game has to offer. So yeah. I'm done with it, but my kids will keep playing it. That's fine.
And I got an email from Nintendo about it. And just from the promotional email that they sent out, I came to the same conclusion that you did. I knew that this was not going to be a game that was worth $60 and that eventually it would be worth playing with someone else who had bought it.
Yeah, and it's weird because it kind of is in the same style of game as Splatoon. Like they're trying to make their own IP. They're trying to do their own twist on a genre that exists, but make it like the Nintendo version of that. And I really like where they landed with Splatoon. I'm really excited for Splatoon 2. Whereas ARMS just kind of, it fell more flat for me, and it doesn't feel like there's enough in that game yet to justify the cost, you know, of like the full price. So we'll see.
Do you think that's because you like first person shooters so much and just the arena style shooter like that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I like third person action games too. So yeah, I don't know. Whatever. It's ARMS. It is what it is. I probably won't talk about it again after this. But I did get back to Final Fantasy XIV, which I talked about a little bit up above in the main topic. And like, I'm not going to get super into it, but it just, you know, getting back into it, I forgot how good the music is in this game.
Yeah, it's so pretty.
Like it's the main Final Fantasy composer. It's great. Like the music in this is such good and true Final Fantasy music. And it took me a little bit to get back into it, but I forgot how much the story in this game is just so good. Like this feels like more of a Final Fantasy story than anything since basically Final Fantasy IX. Like all of the ones in between, yeah, they're Final Fantasy games, but they don't have any of that traditional Final Fantasy feel to them. Like they are doing their own thing, and that's fine. I like those games for what they are. Like I've played all of them. This feels like a return to form, and I really appreciate that. So I love the story in Final Fantasy XIV. I did get caught. I know you do. I did get caught in the end game like gear grind, but I almost gave up. And then they patched in 4.0, which is like the patch for the new expansion. And when they did that, it converted all of the currency like down a level. Like it basically changed the pricing and the currency for all of the end game stuff. And it went from me being super frustrated and stuck on the story to me being geared enough to do all the story straight through.
Great.
In like 20 minutes of me just buying stuff with the existing currency I'd built up. So that patch, if it had to have hit within a day or two of when it did, I probably would have bounced off the game, but it got there just the right time. So as soon as I did that and I was no longer like item level blocked, I've just been playing through the rest of the story. So right now I am almost at the end of 3.4, and the way the content patches went was 3.0 is Heaven's Word, like the expansion just as it came out, and that's what I had played up to. The content I had to get through was 3.1, and then 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, and then 3.5 has 2 patches. There's like 3.5 and then 3.55. Those are all of the main content patches for the game. And they bridge the gap between the end of 3.0, so Heaven's Word, and Stormblood, which is the new expansion, which is considered 4.0. And everything through 3.3 is like wrapping up the Dragon Song War, which is the whole story of Heaven's Word. So it was really good to get back into that and tie up all the loose ends. And then that slowly, and it's very organic the way that it bleeds into the next set of story, which is setting up for Stormblood. So
what is the story of Stormblood? I don't even know.
I don't know, and I've left it that way on purpose because if I were into the game like I had been in the past, I would have known beforehand. But like, I'm actually going into this pretty spoiler free in terms of the expansion. Like, I don't know what it's about. I have suspicions. I think that it's actually going to be about fighting the Garlean Empire, which would be great because
That's
it's kind of hinted at in A Realm Reborn, and it kind of comes back here and there, but you never really have a whole story about fighting them. I hope that's the way it goes, and I'm guessing based on what I've seen that might be the way it goes, but I don't know for sure yet. So
gotcha.
I'm just finishing 3.4, which is really the first content patch to get into bridging the gap between the Dragonsong War and whatever 4.0 is. And so I have 2 more content patches, and then I get to move on to Stormblood. So I'm really excited for that, and I'm enjoying it a lot.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you got past that in-game gearing bump that you hit, because you had told me that you had only played around 3 hours and had already gotten frustrated with it.
That's why I was frustrated. I'm
super glad.
I was item level blocked. Like, it's just, it's really
and that's
annoying.
Awful.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy XIV is really bad about that, and it's like coming in at the end of an expansion should not be the easiest place to come in and experience an expansion.
But it is. It totally is.
But it is.
Yeah.
It is.
So, like, I actually probably did this the best way. I played through the whole expansion, and then I stopped, and then I came back right before the next expansion. And when I played through A Realm Reborn, it was exactly the same thing. I started A Realm Reborn about a month before Heavensward came out. So I played straight through A Realm Reborn and right into Heavensward. Like, I hit the end game within, I want to say, like 5 days of the expansion coming out. So, like, I had a smooth transition from one into another, and that's what I basically did this time too. I'm off by a couple days because a lot of people are deep into Stormblood already, and I haven't started it yet, but within a week of it coming out. So
yeah,
I feel like this is probably the best way to do it. I would not be surprised if I play through Stormblood up to the end of 4.0, and then I stop again until the next expansion comes out. It seems to work for me.
Are you still playing the Bard right now, or are you trying any of the other classes?
No, I'm still playing the Bard. If I do hit endgame, I usually jump back and I play some other classes up to endgame level just because I enjoy them. I like being a tank, I like being a healer, but not the first time through the content. I like being my main class as I play through the content the first time. So I'll probably jump back and do some White Mage or Paladin or something if I hit endgame, but we'll see. We'll see if I'm sick of it by then, if I'm ready to move on to the next game. There's kind of this like June, July slump of games, so now is probably a good time for me to be getting back into an MMO.
And that's one of the, you saying that playing through your main class is playing through with your main class is what you do. My main class was a White Mage, and that's one of the reasons that I never did go back into it and push through, because it's a lot harder to do as a White Mage, I feel. At least it was at the time, and where I didn't want to level up another DPS class with doing either Bard or Black Mage like I'd thought about. So cause I think my highest was around 36 at the time when 50 was the highest you could be. So it was gonna have to be even more leveling. So I am jealous you did a damage class that you could do a lot better with.
Yeah, and I mean, they keep patching in more catch-up mechanics too, so it's like,
yeah, of course,
there are more excuses to get back into the game. They are really good about making it easier to run old content and get new people through old content. There's lots of incentives, and we've talked about that before. But that could be a whole nother discussion on its own. So the other thing that I did Final Fantasy related this week is the 4-job Fiesta started, and I know I've talked about this before, but if you guys weren't around last year, Final Fantasy V has a very intricate job system that is super fun. And if you haven't ever played Final Fantasy V and you're a fan of the series, you should, because you will see a lot of classic Final Fantasy stuff there, but it's the first really good implementation of a job system in the whole series. So with that being said, the 4-job Fiesta, don't do it ever on your first playthrough. It's not the way to do your first playthrough of the game.
No, not at all.
But if you have done a playthrough, this is a really fun way to do it with a community. And essentially what you do is you play up to the first crystal where you get your jobs, and in the main way the game works, the systems of it, you unlock a bunch of jobs and you can equip them, you can learn skills from them, you can mix and match them and switch them out onto various characters whenever. With the 4-job Fiesta, when you hit a crystal, you tweet at the bot that's set up for this event, and it tells you one job from that crystal, and that is the only one you can use, and you have to use it. And then when you get to the second crystal, you tweet about the second crystal at the bot, and it unlocks one more job. So then you have to keep at least one character with the job from the wind crystal, and then have at least one with the job from the water crystal. And you do it all the way until you have 4 jobs, and those are the only 4 jobs you can use for the entire game. It's really fun because it's a challenge, and it makes you play the game differently every time.
So you haven't beat this yet, have you? I don't think so.
No, I'm on the second crystal. So I did my initial run to the first crystal before it even started, which saves like 30 or 40 minutes when it does kick off. The wind crystal job that I got was monk. So it was a lot of punching my way through to the second crystal, which is the water crystal. And then I just unlocked time mage for my second job, which is less useful, but it is good for haste and slow, and then maybe some end game damage, but mostly haste and slow. So it's kind of like a lot of punching, and then I moved over to a lot of like fast punching, I guess is where I'm at now.
Yeah, there are worse jobs that you could have. I don't know, you're fine. Like 4 berserkers.
Yes, you could do Berserker Risk if you want. That makes it more challenging. I have not done that yet, but maybe one of these days. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to keep working on it. I'll play around with Time Mage and report back next week. The last thing that I did that was really fun was PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, and I mentioned this last week. Did you ever look into it?
I did not. I completely forgot.
Okay, so it's on PC, it's early access. This is one of them that they said is going to come to consoles. That was the E3 announcement around it. It's basically like a scavenger shooter, but it's good. Like, there are other games like this out there where you have to go around, it dynamically well, not dynamically. There's a landscape, there's a map that's predefined, but the spawns of weapons and gear and items and stuff is random in all of the locations that it could be. So any building that you walk into, it could have guns in it. It could have a helmet. It could have like protective vests or different clothing or a backpack or a high level backpack, all that kind of thing. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the setting. But the actual gameplay is there are 100 people. You all get dropped into this arena. It's a giant map. Think like, I don't know if it's Arma scale, but it's a really, really big map, right?
All right.
And there's that scavenge mechanic. So you try to equip yourself and kill the other people, and it's the last one alive wins. So it's 100 people, giant battle royale, kind of like the Hunger Games, but with some scavenger mechanics mixed in. And it's a shooter. I mean, it's like a third-person shooter, but you can click to aim down the sights and get like first-person view if you're trying to actually aim really precisely. The interesting thing about this game is that there are some random elements that really make this game amazing. So the first one is the map is the same every time. I'm sure they'll put in more maps later down the line. But the thing that changes is that the plane that brings you onto the map flies a different line across the map every time. And it's always a straight line, but where that straight line goes from one side of the map to another can be from any angle to any angle. So you can never do the same drop into the map every time. And you pick when to jump out of that plane. So there are areas that are like a military base or like a power plant, things that have lots and lots of possibility to have very good items in them, right? Like the military base in particular. You can choose, like if the plane is happening to fly by that time, which it doesn't always, right? It's a random flight path. If it's going to fly by it, a lot of people are going to jump out at the military base. So you know you're going to get into fights right away. Or you could jump out in the middle of nowhere and parachute down. So that's up to you. And every time it's different because it's not always the same flight path. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect, and this is the one that really makes the game, is that after a couple minutes, a giant white circle appears on the map. And it takes up about a fourth of the map. And it says, you have, I think it's 5 minutes the first time, but it's like, you have 5 minutes before the boundaries start closing in. So there's a countdown where it gives you time to gear up or fight or whatever immediately around you. And then this giant blue electricity wall starts coming in towards the white circle. And it slowly closes in on it. And if it gets past you and you're not in that white circle, you start to take damage. And it's only a little bit of damage at first, but if you stay out there, you'll just die. So it constrains the battlefield down to about the fourth of the size of the map. And then as soon as it finishes with that circle, another circle spawns inside of that one that's even smaller, and you have another couple minutes. And every time one of these circles spawns, it's smaller, and the time limit is lower. so it happens faster. And the damage level of the electricity wall goes up. So as the game goes on, it brings everybody closer and closer and closer together, so the games never drag, which is my problem with a lot of those big giant map war games, is they just drag on forever.
And people just are kind of jerks about it and do hide out and turtle their entire game.
Yes, exactly. So that doesn't happen because it's impossible for it to happen. You constantly have to get back into the circle. And you can get lucky. You can drop in a place and have the circles just keep constricting right on you. And that's kind of amazing. I had that happen one time that I played, but usually that doesn't happen. And like, the circle is always within the bigger one, but it's not always in the center. It could be way off to the side. It could be at the top. It could be like, part way in the middle. So it's not that you can go to the center of the very first circle and know that you're safe, because that almost never works. There's this element of randomness to where the next circle is going to be inside of that one. So it's fun. Like on a solo play, it's decently fun. It's okay. The real meat of the game that's amazing is playing duos or squad, because working with teammates in this game is so fun. Like, you have to work together, you have to share scavenge, you have to help each other out and communicate, and like, okay, when do we have to go? When should we move to get inside the next circle? And then you're listening and you're covering each other and you're watching out. So it's all of these things that people in these type of games have talked about, that it's amazing, but that element of the circle that's constantly closing in just changes the gameplay to the point where I actually like it and I'm not bored, where all of those other ones I was always bored.
That's really astonishing.
Yeah. So that's PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, and it's super hot right now. I guess it's blowing up on Twitch and on PC, and everybody's talking about it. I finally got around to it, and I really like it. I'm kind of surprised I like it, but I played with my brother and a bunch of his friends, and it was a really good time. I can easily see this game becoming an evergreen game for me, especially multiplayer. Wow. Like, I'm not going to play it solo evergreen, but I think anytime that I see somebody on Steam jump into it, I would gladly jump into a game with them. That kind of evergreen.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, actually, because there are a lot of games where I just like, I'm not going to play this alone. I don't feel like doing it right now.
Yeah, and I'm having fun playing it alone right now because it's novel, but that part will wear off. I don't think the fun of playing this in a duo or as a squad is going to wear off. I think that has some serious staying power.
And it is in early access right now, it says, so you can expect a lot more content. You can expect a whole load of improvements from where it is right now. And as you were saying earlier, you don't usually get a lot out of early access games, that they can feel really sandboxy. So the fact that you like it this much already speaks well of what it's going to become eventually.
Yes, I agree. So that's why I had to mention it. If I play more of it, or if they change things, or I get some more sessions in, I will report back. But for now, just know that if you see this weird-looking game called PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds that's in early access, give it a second look. Even though at a glance, it doesn't seem like you should, you definitely should.
I may have to look into this and check it out on a Steam sale.
Yes, if that Steam sale comes up next week.
If they do a sale on this one in particular. I mean, $30 isn't that bad for an early access game like this, where if it were something I would actually play for a long time.
Yeah, well, keep your eye on it.
Yeah, I'm going to.
I think that's it for this week. You can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address, as always, is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. We also have the longer discussion threads on our subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
And remember, folks, we are part of a podcast network. You need to be listening to each and every one of our shows because they're lovely, just like you are. And you can head over to geek2geekcast.com and see if we have anything that tickles your fancy.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter as @Professor Beej. That's Beej with 2 E's. And you can find me online at bjkeaton.com.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
I'm still motivated.
Comment comics. Hey everyone, this is Rob, your friendly neighborhood comic geek.
And this is Liam, the languishing, lascivious Liam of Langley.
Wow, that was extremely illiterate of you.
Well, I try.
We are the hosts of The Comic Box, part of the Geek to Geek podcast network.
So join us.
Bop, bop.
Oh, yeah.